Hi, I'm Victoria OLeary, and I'm going to be presenting on the section of early studies on infant deprivation. So, talking about reactive attachment disorder and parent-child attachment, um, the disorders came around through John Bowlby, who's a psychologist, his development of the attachment theory. And the idea of this is that attachment is adaptive. So, children and all of us are predisposed to form attachments, and so the attachment theorists believe that children form these internal schemas or mental organizations of themselves and their caregivers, and then form models based on these interactions. For instance, there's attachment security, and in this model, the children expect their caregivers will provide care, comfort, and support when they're scared. And then there's attachment insecurity, and these children expect their caregivers will be dismissive and inappropriate in care. And then there's disorganized attachment, and in this one, there's no coherent set of expectations in one in distress. Could be sometimes helpful, sometimes not, and this depends on the child's previously formed interactions with the caregivers they've had experiences with. And then there's the idea of parent-child attachment, and this is experience expectant. So as I mentioned, we are biologically predisposed to form attachments, and infants exposed to a primary caregiver early in life will develop an attachment and relationship with that caregiver, even if mistreated, and then form those models as described in the attachment theory. And the ages 6 to 12 months is the most sensitive time for developing this attachment, because this is when the human nervous system organizes itself in response to attachment figures. Before age of 6 months, children don't have much of a preference for their caregiver, but then once they reach that age, then they show more stranger anxiety and attachment behaviors. This differs from the quality of attachment, which is experience dependent. So this is unique to each caregiver infant based on the quality of their interactions, whereas parent-child attachment is something that happens with everyone in the human species. And then reactive attachment disorder is a DSM-5 disorder, and is characterized when infants are deprived of minimal care during the sensitive period of attachment formation, so after 6 months, and they appear listless, withdrawn, sad. This results in the absence of clear attachment relationships and behaviors. They're unable to make eye contact, like smile, cuddle, other forms of comfort. And it's important to know that this is different from disorganized or insecure children, those attachments, because they have actual relationships with caregivers, whereas children with reactive attachment disorder have absent or very minimal attachment whatsoever. Okay, so disinhibited social engagement disorder is another attachment disorder, and children with disinhibited social engagement disorder show culturally and developmentally inappropriate patterns. So this is characterized through overly familiar behavior with strangers. Around 6 to 7 months, children will start to show wariness of strangers, and children with this disorder don't. They will often talk to strangers, make inappropriate physical contact, like sit on laps, hold hands, and wander out without the caregiver's permission. Normally around this age, typically developing children will check back with their caregiver if the situation is uncertain, and children with this disorder don't check back for safety or anything. So this is also only diagnosed if children have a history of severe neglect and deprivation. This could be through an institution such as orphanages where they didn't get enough care, abuse, which could be characterized through parental neglect or abuse, or just a disruptive history where they were put into multiple foster homes, and never really had a secure attachment. And this was, and the indiscriminately friendly children is taken from research done by Bowlby again. He was doing a study for the World Health Organization and described a group of children as showing undiscriminating and shallow friendliness. Um, and then another study done by Barbara Tizard which corroborated his findings, was a longitudinal study of infants raised in institutions, and they studied 65 children who spent their first years in a London nursery, and they provided adequate care, but the caregivers were directly instructed to not show any bonding with the infants, and findings did show that 18 out of 26 children kept there until age 4, showed emotional social problems, and then there was 10 other children Tizard described as indiscriminate, attention-seeking, and socially superficial, meaning they're exceptionally affectionate toward caregivers, would beg for attention, show no wariness of strangers, and these signs proceeded until the age of even like 16. And these descriptions were what classified this disorder and formed the basis for DSM-5. Okay, so what causes reactive attachment disorder and disinhibited social engagement disorder? So in reactive attachment disorder, it is believed to be caused by an absence of attachment. In a study called the Bucharest Early Intervention Project, it was conducted by researchers in a Romanian orphanage, and they examined children's development for 54 months to determine the outcomes. And there was three groups of children used, so non-institutionalized children who were just in their Romanian homes, children raised in orphanages, and then children raised in foster care. The non-institutionalized children showed